Okay. Okay, everybody, we're going to start in 1 or 2 minutes, so just hang tight. Just making sure that streaming is working before we kick it off. And I always forget to start the recording, so I hope I don't forget this time. Even though streaming is taking care of that, but okay. Okay, yeah, it's live. Okay, let me kick it off. Let me start the recording. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. This is part of our future career community where we help you land jobs in shortest time. We always bring expert speakers, professionals, leaders in tech to help you with your questions, your challenges. Everybody has their own experience, wisdom, and they share that knowledge. And this is how we all grow together. Today, I'm very, very excited. I'm very proud to have Nick Fadzovich. He's a previous colleague with me at Microsoft. We used to work together on big communities with lots of, deliveries. I think Nick delivered a ton of, you know, presentations and demos and multiple projects, big projects, complex ones with Microsoft. And I've seen how very, very exciting. Everybody, listen to his thoughts and his wisdom. So today, again, he's gonna walk us through his own journey, and he's gonna share, how to sharpen your focus, deliver impact, not hours, and share his personal experience on what happened during, the time he, got laid off from Microsoft and how he moved out of that, and also share some other very insightful tips about career in general, switching careers, moving in this hard time. So today, again, Nick is an IAM expert, from ex Microsoft. He's now working for Deloitte. I'll let him give his own introduction. But Nick, I'm very, very excited to have you with us today, and the floor is yours. Please walk us through your talk.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a little bit of background here. I want to preface all of this with I am not an expert. I went through a job and career change. I think I had some learnings. I've got some thoughts and ideas on things that helped me. Hopefully they will help you. If you have questions, this is certainly designed to be interactive. For those of you that have joined here on Microsoft Teams, feel free to come off of mute or raise your hand. If you joined us on any of the other platforms, type your questions into the chat, and we'll make sure that those get relayed and answered. So this is definitely meant to be interactive. I really hope it's not just me talking to you. Everybody's journey is different, and so all the things that I have to say and what worked for me may not work for you, and you may have different perspectives. So I'm happy to take those on. Just very quickly, I've got a couple of topics here we're going to cover. Many of these will, if you're into that sort of career transition, many of these will be familiar. Hopefully, I'll give you a unique perspective and what worked for me, and maybe that will help you sort of move through your journey as well. A little bit about me. Again, I'm not an expert in this space. I've got a little bit of expertise in managing communities and a lot of technical expertise in identity and access management, but it's not, I'm not a career journey leader as some of the folks on the call are. So I'm just a guy, right? I live in Duluth, Minnesota. I have a wife and 2 kids. They're teenage daughters that are preparing for high school and college. So that keeps me pretty busy. I'm currently at Deloitte. I'm in the Microsoft cybersecurity practice as an identity Microsoft Entra engineer and technical specialist. But as you previously mentioned, I was at Microsoft for over 10 years. I was on the professional services side. So Microsoft has sales, engineering, and professional services very broadly. And I was on the consulting side of Microsoft, where I was dealing with clients every day, helping them deploy large scale and complex identity solutions. And then obviously moving into the cloud after that. I think there's a prerequisite when introducing yourself for these types of things to provide a fun fact. So I included one here. I've actually been to all 50 of the U.S. states. My parents, when I grew up, both of my parents were teachers. And so we had a lot of free time in the summer, and we would pile into the family van and drive around. And so that got me a pretty good head start. And then most recently, I started checking off some of the more far-flung states out of the way. So my last state was Alaska. So that's something that I get questions a lot. I do like to travel, and especially I like going fishing, as you can see in the photo. That's actually at my in-laws lake here in Minnesota. That's what's called a northern pike, big, skinny, almost barracuda-looking fish with lots of teeth. That one for our lake is a pretty large one, although that's maybe 20, 25 inches. The fish that are in northern Canada get into the 40 and 50-inch range and, get to be the size of people. So while that's a big fish for me, it's not a big fish for those that fish a lot. My LinkedIn is there as well, but I'm Nick Fads on LinkedIn, Nick Fajevitz. So please feel free to reach out to me. You leverage my network, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works. So I think LinkedIn is an excellent tool. It was definitely helpful for me. That was really great. A little bit about my situation. So after 12 years at Microsoft, delivering lots of the good presentations and the client delivery work, unfortunately, my position and ultimately my role was eliminated as part of just a general layoff. I was transitioning jobs. I was moving to a new position. I was told that there was going to be headcount that was there, and it turns out there wasn't. It was not anybody's particular fault. I wasn't targeted, and it wasn't for bad performance. That being said, having a random meeting put on your calendar on a Monday morning, having your boss say, "Hey, Nick, I've got some bad news, and also I've invited HR here," is not the type of thing that you really want to go through, right? I think a lot of people on this call have had that experience. It doesn't really matter how or why. It sucks. I took that on as a challenge. The first thing I did was, went and talked to my wife. And the second thing I did was start thinking about how am I going to get the new position. I actually took about a week before I actually went and started doing something. I was fortunate that it was right around the July 4th holiday. And so I took the long week and the weekend to just sit back and sort of reflect. And then I came back that Monday morning, and I considered finding a new job a job. I would spend a number of hours every day. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd get myself ready like I would every other day. I would jump on LinkedIn, I would respond to any email, I would reach out to any contacts, and would go through my process and spend a couple of hours every day trying to find the position. And then when I was done, I'd close my laptop. And that was it. That was what I did for the day. 4 to 5 to 6 hours, go through that process, close my laptop, and go have dinner with my family. That's what helped keep me particularly sort of able to walk that line. I heavily used LinkedIn and the network that I had built over time. I used LinkedIn to find roles. I searched for job postings. I used LinkedIn because people I knew posted open opportunities. I would reach out to them. And one thing that I thought was a little bit different than what I hear when I talk to people about their career journey, I did not send a single resume to an employer unless I had talked to either the hiring manager or somebody I knew at the company who could then forward my resume on. I avoided what's called the applicant tracking systems like the plague. I did not think that there was any use for me to throw my name in the ring for where 1,000 other people's names were. That seemed like winning a lottery ticket. And so I spent my time using the networks and the second level networks that everybody in my network had very, very heavily. I reached out to people on LinkedIn. I reached out to friends that I knew were in the industry outside of LinkedIn. And I really just managed my networks for the jobs and the ones that I either saw posted or were targeting. And that was my approach. Does that work for everybody? No, it does not. Is it the most effective? I don't know. It's what I did. And I had about a 3-month gap in employment and was back working with multiple offers, it turned out, after that 3-month period. And so got to choose Deloitte out of the couple of different places that I was considering. So it was successful for me. Your mileage may vary, but we'll talk a little bit about those details. So are there any questions? Again, ideally interactive. Any questions on the chats? Any questions from the folks? You should be able to come off of mute. If you want to ask me things about fishing or Minnesota or my job hunt, I'm happy to take those. Rubber worm on a Texas rig, weedless, for those that are interested in how we catch a lot of bass and pike on my lake there.
Yeah,
any questions?
So far, no questions. You're doing a great job.
Okay. All right. Let's get into it then. One of the things that I really tried to focus on was, and I have a tendency to talk about these things as if I'm talking through a lens. That's why the title of this presentation is Kaleidoscope, how to have impact. I think of things as when I'm trying to look at a problem, I try to look at it from one direction, and then I turn the problem, 90 degrees and look at it through a different direction. I call those lenses. And so when I talk about, an impact lens, what I'm trying to do there, what I did was I tried to update my resume, looking at it from the perspective of a potential, hiring manager. Are they going to look at what I had in my resume and the work that I had done from their perspective, not from my perspective, on the things that were important? And so I got a couple of pieces of good advice, one of which was to focus on outcomes. Don't say I manage social media accounts. Say that you grew social media by 45%. Right? You should have metrics. If you can talk about I increased by X amount, or there were X number of clients, or that type of, some amount of revenue. That resonates significantly better than saying I manage customer service issues, right? Because if I was when I was in a position to hire, which I often was in my previous role, people who could say like I managed at this level gave me a better sense of whether they were a good fit and whether they were the type of people that I was looking to hire. If they just said I worked on customer service issues, everybody works on customer service issues. Tell me more about what the scope and scale of that work was. So again, I really tried to look through a lens of what is the hiring manager going to consider important here. You can get a lot of that from the job description. Ideally, you're not going in blind just based on job description. Having worked at Microsoft, written job descriptions, have subsequently looked at job descriptions from the outside, job descriptions are often terrible examples of what the job is going to be. Often they are rewritten by human resources. They have to be very particular about the things they can say and not say. And as I mentioned, I tried really hard to have informational conversations or internal conversations about what is this job really looking for and what are the things that is important to them. And so I would design and structure my resume as such. So I would strongly recommend folks from a resume perspective try to look through an impact lens rather than your actual activity lens. And with that, you can things to sort of show that impact. If you have samples of your work, if you have contributed to something that was publicly available, if you haven't contributed to things that are publicly available, go try to figure out how to do that. If you've done any sort of, public sector work, or not public, work with charitable organizations that you can point to. If you have anything that you've published, right? These are all things that you can actually provide as examples of the work that you've done. If you have any sort of videos or things of that nature. And for what it's worth, one of the things that I took away from this was I needed to have more of a public persona, such that if this were to happen to me again, I could point people to my YouTube videos or my podcast or whatever additional materials I was putting out. You'll see at the end of this, I wrote an article about my experience. Part of that was I didn't want to be caught in a position where I didn't have anything to say. I've been at my current job for about a year. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to start to try to figure out how to put things out there into the public in this role, such that I will then have a more of a public record of the work that I'm doing. And so, for some of us that might be too late, but it's something to consider going forward. If you have those things, make sure you highlight them. It's definitely the type of thing that hiring managers will go review to see what your thought leadership is in the subject areas that you have. So if you have those, make sure you include them, I guess is the point here. Okay, and yeah, I see Roshana. You've got your hand up.
Hey, Nick.
Hey.
Question regarding what you said in putting in the public. Yes, you're absolutely right. But like you said, for some people might be a little late. In that sense, what I'm trying to say is I'm also coming from a public sector where I have done a lot of writing and graphic designing and all sorts of visual, non-visual stuff. Unfortunately, all of my whatever work I have done, I should say, I can't say it on this right now. Maybe we can connect offline. I can't put it there because it was for that organization. You know what I mean? Sure. So I did all the work, and then so I never thought that I needed to make portfolio, because where I'm coming from, where I have worked since last 10 years, never thought that like this day will come where I'm not going to work, and I didn't have enough notice and didn't even think about like bringing all my work with me, basically. Yeah. So I ended up with almost nothing with all my work. But there are a few things in public, like, Facebook and Instagram and all these kind of things. So the question regarding that, building a portfolio, basically.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be so strong, right? Because I don't have all sorts of like what it needs to be. And then how would I go with that?
Do you have Instagram?
So
I think
could you start a professional? Could you start putting the content? I guess my question is, could you start putting the content out there now, using the number of hours you're spending every day to do career development and look for new jobs? Could you start creating a portfolio now that 3 months from now you can point to? And go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, so I could do that, but my like what kind of topics I would do is just like scrambling right now. I mean, I have done a lot of different kind of work, but now it just feels like I don't have, my brain is like, I think it's a little bit frozen right now. But I just don't have like a direction to go to.
Rachana, I think your question is mostly, you've been working in something that is very confidential. You cannot share those information, and you don't know how to, present your work publicly while it's confidential. So I think that's the main.
That's correct.
That's the main question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the main question, Nick. If you would like to give it a shot.
No, I would say you probably can't. You probably can't get access or be able to show that portfolio of the work you've done in the past. And so my approach would be start creating content now. And if you don't have a good idea, one of the speakers from the job fair that we had last week said, go into ChatGPT, give it a general idea of what your area of expertise is, and tell it to give you 10 options for content you could create and where you could create it, and start there. And if you are spending a couple hours every day, you could dedicate 30 minutes to just putting content out that you thought was of good quality. And then you're building your portfolio. Make sure it's publicly accessible, and just get started, right? Because this isn't a problem that's going to be solved today. And really none of your problems or anybody's problems in these job hunts are going to be solved today. This is a 3 and 6 month long process. And so if you start getting a portfolio that's out there, A, you may find that you found something else you enjoy doing, and B, it'll give employers a sense of the work that you're meant to do, and how you can help them. And so that'd be my recommendation is spend 30 minutes, twice a week or, however often you want, and just put some content out and see where it goes. Because I think it's important. I think it's important to have not just a resume, but a portfolio, especially for folks who are in the more creative side of the job market. I think it's important for them to be able to have something to show. That'd be my recommendation, Rajana. And if you need some help getting started or need advice or help staying engaged in that space, there's lots of people here on this call that would probably be happy to coordinate with you and to act as cheerleaders and that sort of thing to help you keep moving forward.
Yeah, and again,
Thank you.
just to piggyback here, Rachana, I think if you all shared your LinkedIn profiles here, and maybe just schedule a chat with someone who shared his or her LinkedIn here, and try to discover about yourself, because again, it's a journey. Nobody knows what is the next step going to happen, and if you're in that phase already, you're discovering, you're trying to know what makes sense for you, what resonates, and where do you want to go. So you need definitely to speak a lot and meet multiple people to again get an idea about their world and see if their world matches your own, then maybe that's where you should go, and so on. I think we'll give it back to you, Nick. I know you have some slides.
Yeah. And I know that, in some cases, a portfolio may not be appropriate for everyone. If you're a developer or project manager, a portfolio, may be a little bit less interesting than somebody who's in more creative, graphic design and that sort of thing. But what you can start to do, especially on the development side, is start getting involved in open source projects, start getting your name and just contributing in somewhere so that there's a record of the work that you're doing. Again, if you're in project management, go volunteer and get that published. Do those sorts of things just to get a public record out there. So I think there's lots of opportunity. If you need some help, please reach out to any of the folks that are here. So yeah, good question. Okay, I'll talk a little bit here about the career connections. I took this very, very seriously. As I mentioned, I never submitted a resume unless I had talked to somebody in the organization, ideally a hiring manager for an informational interview, or at a minimum connection or a second level connection that I had that might help. In some cases, I had to work hard to get a connection or get a second level connection for positions that I thought might be useful or might be a good alignment. That's okay too. Tap into your alumni networks if you graduated from college. Certainly tap into any large companies that you've worked for. Be building your network. Try to make as many connections as you can. If you see people actively posting on LinkedIn and you see people actively reposting on LinkedIn, try to add those people as well. I would say growing your network is one of the better places that you can spend your time. If you're going to spend a couple hours a day, then you can spend 30 minutes building your network in LinkedIn or outside of LinkedIn, building your network some other places. It is important to stay authentic, right? So I went through a process where I wrote myself a sort of job description of me. What would the perfect job for me look like? Who was I and what did I do? And then when I was reaching out to people, I tried to stay within that frame, within that lens of who I was. I didn't want to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'm an AI expert. I know all the things about AI when I was an identity and access management person. So I tried to be honest. I tried to be authentic. And what that meant was there were a lot of false starts. And I tried not to get discouraged by that, even if there was a perfect job. If it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. But if you use your networks, that for me was really the best way to go. And that follows up with if you are able to stay within your lens, within your space, also be open to expanding that. If you can show that you have experience that's cross-functional, if you can see that your experience is transferable, if you can see areas that are maybe industry, where you can expand the industry that you're focused on. Perhaps you're in government, you want to move commercial. Perhaps you're in finance and you want to move towards manufacturing. As long as you can, I would go do some research into what are the spaces where that is transferable, where your skills might overlap. And then I would focus on those and maybe spend some of your time, some of your number of hours a day working to grow in the spaces where you think there might need to be growth, right? I tried to spend at least an hour a week learning, and not just organically, learning on purpose. There were certain topics that I wanted to learn more about. I would spend an hour per week investigating those, researching them, trying to learn as much as I could about them, just to make sure that I was prepared to understand sort of what was coming next, and to keep my skills as relevant and current as they could, because I knew that every day that I wasn't working, I was probably falling behind. And so I tried to really stay on top of making sure that I was aligned to whatever industry or technical area I was, working towards getting a new role in, so that I could stay up to speed on and be prepared to have those conversations. And that leads to this next phase, which is you really should have a target of the next role, right? What industry do you want to do? Area and technology or expertise do you want to do? I found it useful to do things like career assessments and filtered job boards. I set reminders and targeted searches for different roles. And then I took some of that and kind of analyzed it for where were the gaps that I had forward, because it's going to come across when you're looking and spending forward, because it's going to come across when you're looking and spending your time looking for different positions and which ones to apply to. Again, you're going to your time looking for different positions and which ones to apply to. Again, you're going to spend a number of hours. If you see a position that you like, it's not just a matter of hitting, apply and submitting your resume. You need to go look for people that are in that company, that maybe are in that role, ideally hiring managers, and so on down the line. So that's my recommendation around identifying the role. And when you've identified the role, what is the value that you bring to that role? What are the pain points that the company might be experiencing? Why are they hiring? Are they, if you have a conversation, are they hiring because they're just replacing someone? Are they growing? Do they see a need that they're trying to fill? Ideally, you're having a conversation with folks before you're applying, and you can tailor your cover letter or the first part of your resume to address that understanding, right? It shows that you were listening. It shows that you understand what's going on. You have to get through those applicant tracking systems. Once you do, and your resume is in the hands of the hiring team or the interviewers, you really need to make sure that they understand who you are before you walk in the room, and then you can fill in the gaps, right? Ideally, you're matching their expectations. That's the best way to move forward. And so, identifying the roles that you want and identifying the value you bring to those roles will really lead to you having a much higher success of getting the interview and then being successful once you go from there. Any questions on any of that? Okay.
No questions.
Yeah. Okay. I also found it helpful to map my skills from my past work and the future opportunities. When I was looking at a job description, I would literally set it next to my resume and see which of the areas in my resume that mapped and which of the areas were maybe missing from the job description. And I was brutally honest with myself. If it said needed to have experience, in a multinational organization, if I didn't have that, I would make sure that I highlighted it and figured out what was my answer for how I was going to answer the question, have you done this before? No, but I've worked with very large organizations and, so on down the line. What were my strengths and how do they map to some of the weaknesses on the job, the description, and what I've heard about that role? So how could I reframe my experiences into that new space was something that I focused heavily on, and really tried to make sure that I was honest about my assessment of whether this was a good opportunity. Because again, once I decided to go after a role, I really wanted to spend some time and energy and put into it. So that was something that I focused on, and then also tried to figure out what was next. So for me, I knew that cloud and identity and access management were the future. But I also knew that artificial intelligence was coming. Now, this was a year and a half ago. It seems like a lifetime. AI wasn't necessarily the same focus that it is today. If you haven't been exposed to AI throughout your career, you really need to start to catch up. For me, that's what's next, but maybe it's something different in your industry. So try to be a little bit future thinking. Try to focus your time on some of the spaces where you think people might be going. That way, when you are crafting your resume, having conversations, and ultimately doing interviews, you can be seen as a thought leader in the space and somebody that they really need to have in the role.
So Nick, I think I have a question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think again, this is because I observe this from so many people that I speak to every day. The amount of information today is overwhelming, and you can easily get distracted to so many sidetracks. How do you protect yourself from those distractions, or that focus? The focus will definitely make you more efficient and faster to land the job, but distractions are everywhere. What's your wisdom here?
Yeah, I treated my job hunt as a job. So I knew that I was at home. I knew that I didn't really have responsibilities professionally, but it was pretty clear to my family that didn't mean it was an opportunity to come just hang out and say hello. I was let go in July. I had all of August, or the rest of July and all of August. It's the middle of the summer. I could have easily have been golfing every day, but I didn't. I took it seriously. I sat down at my desk. I had, a monitor and keyboard and mouse, and really just tried to spend a couple of those dedicated couple of hours with as much focus as I could get around the jobs that I wanted. And I dedicated myself every single day to treat it like I was, working in a professional setting. That helped me a lot. Now, it's also exhausting and easy for burnout. And so I didn't take all of that with me into the afternoon and the evening. Essentially, I worked from 8 a.m. till noon, and then I'd get up for lunch, and then I could go do whatever it is that I needed to do for the rest of the day. And so I tried to compartmentalize my job hunting with my distractions and distill them down into the different parts of the day. That's what worked for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. One other thing that I do see when I was talking with folks is there are certain patterns that come about in your career. Some people stay in positions for a very long time. Some people move around quite a bit. It was important for me to make sure that I was able to describe to people how I handled change. I was going through a career change that was forced upon me, but everybody's experienced change. You take on a new role, you get promoted, your manager changes, the organization changes. I wanted to have a really good answer for how do I handle change, because it comes out in questions of tell me a time that you faced adversity. Show me an opportunity where you tackled growth, right? There are all these normal questions that people will ask. And I really wanted to make sure that I had a good answer for what happened. And that there are these concepts of what's called a 10-word answer. So if somebody says, tell me about the time you had adversity. How can you answer that in 10 words or less? Essentially exactly 10 words. And I wanted to have 10-word answers. Tell me a little bit about your career transition. I wanted to have a 10-word answer. And I worked hard at it. I worked hard to identify and distill down. I was impacted by a layoff. I'm an identity engineer, right? I just wanted to be able to answer simple questions with a simple answer. It helped frame for me the direction I wanted to go and be able to talk to people more authentically about what had happened. And part of that was identifying these patterns and showing what value I had to bring. If you can answer those types of difficult questions, and again, go ask ChatGPT to ask you, career questions and try to work on your 10-word answers for them, is a very easy way when you're sitting, spending your 4 hours a day to sort of understand that you're looking at, that's a lens where you are trying to break down the complex questions into very simple answers. and really understanding how you can communicate your value and how you manage change. And I think that was really important.
So Nick, just to follow up here, 10 words
Yeah.
answered, like, you picked like 10 words to explain what you want to answer, or is it like the whole sentence is 10 words?
It's a whole sentence of 10 words. It's a comprehensive sentence. It's similar to the 30-second elevator speech, pitch.
Okay.
Tell me about the product you have. Sell me this pen, right? These are the types of things. For me, it was a 10-word answer. I wanted to have a 10-word answer for, why are you looking to change jobs? Explain to me a time where you faced adversity. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right. I had 10-word answers that helped me really get down to the root of where I was trying to go and what I was trying to do. And it was especially important around, tell me the value that you brought to the organization or the work that you did, that sort of thing. And so I tried to find out how to answer those in 10 words.
And you use this for the interviews, right? This is what you...
I use it to prepare for interviews.
Okay.
So it was more for me to understand the sort of, the basic fundamental answers for the questions I was going to get. And it just prepared me. And I would develop 10-word answers for, if I was looking for if I was looking at a specific role, I was about to apply, or I go talk to somebody about it, I would ask myself a couple of questions and try to develop a 10-word answer to make sure that I understood sort of where that position was going, how do I fit into this? How do I fit into this role? Where are my strengths in this role? What are my weaknesses in this role? I'd go figure out a 10-word answer and off I go. So that's what ended up working for me. Others may just say, try to be able to answer this in a simple way, or distill down your value. That's what worked for me.
No, 100%. And again, I think this, makes it more impactful. Like everybody needs to prepare for interviews, because if they don't prepare, then that's unfortunately, where we fail to, land the message to the hiring manager and convince them that you are the right person for that fit or for that role. Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's ultimately one of those experiences that is pretty devastating, because you work so hard just to get to the interview. You go through an interview cycle, and then you hear that you didn't get the job. That's so difficult. And so figuring out how to prepare yourself as well as you can is really, really important. And so that's, a tactic. It may work for you, it may not, but it's a tactic that you might use going forward.
Awesome.
And it leads into, now that I know the role that I am going after, and I can define my value, broadly speaking, what is the value that I'm bringing to this specific role, right? We talked about try to be a thought leader and think about what comes next in the area. I was thinking that certainly AI was going to be a big piece of this. I brought that to the different conversations that I had when I was being interviewed and talking to hiring managers. Now that I know what that value is, I'm a thought leader. How does that apply to this specific position that I'm applying for? And is that a good fit? And if I thought the answer was yes, then I would go, try to find somebody to talk to about the role. If I couldn't answer that question, what's my value? How do I fit into this role? Then it was not necessarily a role for me. And so, I did try to sort of, when I was having conversations, especially informational, I would tell a little bit about myself. How does my story fit and, seem to match? I spent a lot of time in informational interviews trying to talk about the culture and the structure of the organization. I wanted to make sure it was a good fit for me and that I was a good fit for them. And I do that through storytelling a lot of the time. You can, all my fishing stories and all that sort of thing, right? That's a way to make it personal, right? Try to have a couple of those in your back pocket to talk about what you did for the weekend or, plans you have coming up. These are the types of things that will really help you sort of identify what's coming up next. So that's the approach that I took. And so you should use it to build your career story. It helped me to understand I started out working the graveyard shift at a help desk, and then I did some financial services IT work, and that led me to human resources and human capital IT work. And I didn't know that at both of those I was doing cybersecurity. And then I went through a couple of smaller consulting companies and ended up at Microsoft. Like, that is a story that I know and can tell, and it leads me to where I am today. And here's what I've learned. And those are the types of frameworks that make it easy for you to communicate as you go through the hiring process. It resonates in your resume. If your resume is more about a story and a path that you took, it resonates when you're having informational conversations. It resonates during interviews. You should really understand what your story is. You should have confidence and clarity about it. What are the topics you want to highlight? What are the areas that you think you still have growth for people that are, in early or mid-career? Certainly, having a growth mindset and wanting to learn more, recognizing you don't know everything, but that you bring a lot to the table.